Now I'd like to call up on stage Mr. Pablo Cerdeira. Pablo was one of our first CCP partners when he was over at Rio, and now he's one of our first research partners. So he's going to talk a little bit about some of the work he's been doing with our data.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thais. Just a second, because I'm going to connect my computer. Okay. Let's see. Oh, that's it. So, thank you. So, welcome. My name is Pablo Cerdeira, and I'm the former Chief Data Officer of Rio de Janeiro, and proudly the first Waze partner with André and other partners from Rio. And I used to be, because now I'm the header of the Center of Technology and Society at Fundação Getúlio Vargas in Rio de Janeiro, and professor of law and technology at the same foundation. We are supposed today to talk about the cities of tomorrow, okay? But instead of cities, I'm going to show what we're going to develop in Rio and among Latin America, but not focus specifically on cities, but in the government of tomorrow. Before I start, just let me take 2 minutes to explain what is FGV, because I believe that no one here has never heard about FGV. But we are the number 9, oh, sorry. We are the number 9, go ahead. We're the number 9 think tank in the world, okay? And the number 1 in Latin America, according to this think tank index by University of Pennsylvania. And just below the Rand Corporation and the Woodrow Wilson. So we're very influent in terms of public policies design, and our focus is to create positive impacts in our society. We managed the state reform in Brazil during the 90s. We are now leading the project of the first nuclear submarine in Brazil. And my team, the Center for Technology and Society, also led the first Bill of Rights of the Internet, okay? Just a second, because the first Bill of Rights of the Internet, called Marco Civil, Tim Berners-Lee, the World Wide Web father, stated that it was probably one of the most important laws in terms of internet regulation, and Brazil was leading this. Specifically, my team was leading this at FGV. So we are now going to this area, data for good. Okay, we're open this. We're starting to work on how to use data to produce public goods. And the main focus, according to my view, is that nowadays we have a lot of governmental and private data. We have a lot of open data. We have academics and scholars, entrepreneurs, and companies working with those data. We have less insights, and we have almost no public goods besides the ones we are producing here, because we are in a very different step here with Waze, all this partnership with cities and etc. But we have a lot of data today, but we are not using it to effectively change our society, okay? Again, I'm talking for we as a general, not the people here, because here we are doing a lot, as we saw. By the next year, we're going to start, probably, if the IDB sign the contracts with us, we're trying to sign this contract. No, it's serious, because we have a lot of formal documents, etc., to match, see for or internal aspects in terms of management fits the IDB, etc. But if our project was approved by IDB, and our goal is to use Waze data to work with 5 cities in Latin America, not only Waze data, okay, but Waze was one of the partners that is supporting this project. And we're going to work with Eric, yes, from Miraflores, our first partner on this project. We're also including São Paulo, Montevideo, Quito, and Jalapa. We have a lot of different cities here, cities big cities, small cities, cities that are already using data, cities that are not using data, exactly to see how can we use data to cause impact in our society in different scenarios, okay? This is why we choose a lot, some so different cities. And our idea is to replicate what we did at Pensa, but with a different drive. If you don't know, Pensa was the big data team at Rio de Janeiro City Hall, created by Mayor Paz. By the time, I was the first Rio's chief data officer. And our goal was to get all those data we had at the operations center, more than 200 layers of data, real-time data, historical data, etc., that were not stored by the time, to save everything in the same database and to start partnerships with the private sector, partnerships with the academia to produce public goods and impact in our society. Our drive by the beginning was this one, traffic operation, okay? Let's focus on traffic operation because we have a lot of information about traffic. We had an Olympic Games ahead of us, so we should work on that. But during the process, we learned that our goal should be on the fourth square here. City planning based on historical city data and social data. Not only official data, but specifically social data. Some projects, just as examples for you, was the accident management. We used Waze data, historical Waze data. We saved for more than 3 years to identify the worst areas. Look, all those projects we developed in Rio are very simple projects in terms of knowledge or equipment. Okay, we had some much more complex projects using CDRs, billion of records per week. But all those projects I'm showing you here are projects that a group of 2 or 3 guys can develop in your city using very low resource in terms of computing. And of course, having useful data. And Waze is useful data because it's generated by the citizens. So on these, we used Waze social alerts and to identify, for instance, that the trap cameras were not on the best place, or at least were causing reduction in number of the accidents, because we had a lot of accidents outside the camera, the speed trap cameras, and much lower where we had cameras. I don't know the reason. Our main goal here was to show we have this and send this data to the engineers of the traffic engineering company to see how they can solve it. Okay. We also used municipal guards location to identify that the peak of accidents were by 6 p.m., but the peak of municipal guards on that area were after this, by 7 p.m. So probably the guards were going after the accidents, not to prevent it. These are only insights, okay? We're producing insights here. This is not the final project. We need specialists to analyze this data and to get final conclusions. But these data can produce very useful insights. Another example of a very simple and also very useful data usage. This, according to a university in Brazil, Rio and São Paulo are losing around 8 to 10% of its GDP in traffic. Okay, people are losing time around 8 to 10% in terms of their time in commuting during all the days. Okay, in Rio it represents around $5.4 billion per year. It's a lot. What can we do with these Waze data? It's very simple. If we aggregate the traffic during a year, removing the outliners, identifying the specific areas and their importance in terms of the total amount of traffic in the city, using the length of each traffic provided by Waze, allowed us to create traffic zones and to add price tags to that. So we are losing $5 billion per year. This area represents 10%, so it's going to represent 10% of $5 billion per year. Of course, it's not so scientific, it's not rocket science, but it's something to, it's an incredible insight for a mayor to decide where to put their money or their effort to solve a problem in our city, and a very problematic one. So we choose the 30 worst areas in Rio. We measured the approximated cost of each, and we also compared the cost of each of these traffic areas with the cost of the solution for that area, for the program. With this, we can calculate the return over the investment. Let's say, oh, you are expecting to reduce the traffic on this area by 50%. Okay, so 50%. So in 3 or 4 years, you are going to have your money back. You are going to give the money back to the citizens, because the citizens are paying for that, okay, with the taxes. This is very simple and very easy to implement, to do in your city. We did projects to fight flood spots using Waze data to create a rank of flood spots, most important flood spots in Rio. We created simulators. This simulator is much more complex, but using Waze data, we were able to identify how the traffic usually spreads in our city, and to simulate what would happen if we lose some specific road. We run this simulation for every single block in our city, and we were able to say, oh, these and that are the most important blocks in our city. You can't have these blocks, these segments blocked, because it's going to affect your city more. It's crucial for a city which is going to which we're going to host an Olympic Games to have this information. Okay, especially because we were trying to avoid strikes or something like this to block the city during the games. Okay. Now, what we're doing, we're saving data for 4 cities in our agreement with, in our future agreement with IDB. We're trying to apply some artificial intelligence methods to aggregate those data and to understand where the mayor needs to work, needs to put their efforts. This is a video of a panel, a demonstration. It's not us, okay? It's from Google. It's the tool Google offers. It's an open source tool to aggregate, to find patterns using artificial intelligence, okay? And we are trying to do this in São Paulo. This is not using artificial intelligence yet, but we are now able, for instance, to aggregate data. Just let me show you a small video of traffic light problems. São Paulo, I believe, is the first city to have a traffic light report on Waze. We are already using these to identify, look, those areas in dark red on the map are the areas with the highest concentration of complaints of traffic lights. And when you click on any area, the tool closest to that area to show the problems with traffic lights there. But do you see, although Waze aggregate their data, here you can see on the right side that there are reports far away from the cross where the traffic light really are. Probably people seeing the problem on the next block or after two blocks after passing through this traffic light. So this is why we're trying to use artificial intelligence to create this kind of aggregation depending on the time, etc. We're going to work to provide it for the cities. This is the panel we're developing in an open source environment, okay? But I'm going to finish talking about how to build the government of tomorrow. This is the main goal of our project with Waze, IDB, etc. Okay? Why? There is this very good book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, from Schwab, the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, where he states that this fourth industrial revolution is unique because It's driven by a global network of smart cities which understand and leverage the opportunities of this revolution, top-down and bottom-up, acting from an holistic and integrated perspective. This is amazing because this revolution we are facing are, in fact, changing the vertical structure we are used to have in our judiciary, in our executive branch, to another model. But I don't like the term industrial revolution. I think it's much more than this. And just let me show you the last slides. For me, we're facing a problem of representativeness in our government, okay? We had the Occupy Wall Street, Arab Spring, June's Journey in Brazil. But we also had the Conservatives winning in London, in UK in 2015, Trump here, Brexit, Doria in São Paulo, Merkel almost losing the election, Macron, Kurz now on Austria, May. All of these elections show us a surprise. They were not expected. They resulted, I'm not judging who was elected or not, but I'm saying the result was not what the main media or the citizens were expecting. Why this? Probably because the citizens are looking for new politicians. We have a lot of newcomers on that previous slide, and we are going to have more newcomers on the following years. But I don't think the citizens are looking for new incomers. Look what happened to Macron just after the election when compared to the previous presidents in terms of approval. His approval dived very, very fast. The same is occurring with Doria in São Paulo, but it's not a problem of they are not looking for new politicians. The citizens are looking for new models of government. I like this quote from Bauman. Bauman said, even the most powerful governments very often cannot deliver on their promise. They don't have enough power to do so. Bauman emphasizes that they don't have enough power to do so. But I prefer to emphasize the promise here, because we are used to have the old model is based on politicians that makes promises in the elections. This is what our citizens are looking to change, because we are now used to have our own newspaper, personalized newspaper on Facebook timeline. We have our own route personalized by us by Waze. We have our own trip, our own travel agents using Google Trip. We are learning to live in a world that adapt to us. But the government are not doing this. The model of government we know are not doing this. The new politician should be the one who can understand the citizens' needs on daily and local basis. We need new governments that are not doing promises during the election and then leaving the citizens after the results. The new politician needs to be in touch with the citizens on daily basis, understanding the local needs. This is why Waze and other social data are so important for the future of the government. It's not only the future of government. We are talking here about a new concept of democracy, a democracy that's not built during elections every 4 years, a democracy that needs to be built daily in straight contact among the government and the citizens. This is what I call the data-driven politician. Technology, in this case, is not only to make our governments more efficient. You are not here to develop technology to make our government more efficient. We are here to provide legitimacy to the future governments, okay? When the future governments are able to understand what's happening in the city and to put their efforts on the right place, on the right side, you are doing this. This is why we are developing this project with Waze, IDB, and the cities. not only to provide technology, but also provide institutionalization and legitimacy for the future of the government. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pablo. Hey. So I'd like to invite our guests up on stage. We'll see. I'll give you guys mics, that way I don't have to. And you guys can just, yeah, have a seat. Pablo. Thank you, guys. Thanks. So happy to have you guys up on stage. I think it's our last partner case, and hopefully you guys have felt all the inspiration coming from the stage. And as we dive into our brainstorming sessions, maybe we can take some of these ideas with us. So I wanted to start quickly, just maybe having a question for each one of you, and then we'll open up to the audience. So first, Jason, loved your presentation. I'm very curious to get more of your opinion on this dynamic environment that we're living in. The commuter has very different needs, different times of days, requesting and different experiences. So what would be your recommendation in getting something like what you guys have done off the ground?
Well, the best solution would be to convince everyone not to work downtown anymore when I'm having events. That would be exceptionally convenient. Unfortunately, no one seems willing to do that. The way it really starts is, for us, it was the defined need, right? We knew that continuing to do what we're doing just means we're reinforcing failure on a daily basis, and without that kind of change, nothing would happen. So. The crisis moment that happened a year ago became a way, kind of a rallying cry of this must change. As a result, at least for us, it directly delivered the institution. You talked about putting your LTEs everywhere. We went with 4G signals on all of our signals throughout downtown. The way it was just a year ago is the person with the key walking up, unlocking the box, and manually programming each signal for each event. So now with 4G, I'm able to have the traffic engineer sit next to me in my operations center while we're looking at the cameras. We have Waze open, we have the Bluetooth counter showing the algorithm of everyone moving, and we're able to now direct everything like that. It seems exceptionally simple. Okay, yes, it may have cost a few dollars, but on the other hand, the outcome is that. So it took that as kind of the impetus. The other thing for us is that our downtown area, where the dynamic is changing so much, 10 years ago, we had roughly 2,000 households in downtown Atlanta. We would have 1 million people come in, 1 million people go every day, but only 2,000 households in the downtown area. We have 20,000 households now, less than 10 years later, which means that you have to have things like stores, parks, schools, not just businesses, and daytime lunch restaurants. So as a result, that change is happening dynamically.
Awesome, thank you. Next, Jonathan, I wanted you to talk to us a little bit more about some of the work that you guys had to do internally in the government, working with different departments. I think it's fascinating how much technology you've been able to deploy, but I'm sure that took a lot of convincing, right? So I wanted to hear a little bit, how has that cultural change been for the government and the departments that you work with?
Well, I think right now, at least in Winnipeg and for many of the cities I talk to, there's been a traditional aspect to let's look at the asset itself, let's look at the road condition. And so we have all these operations that are asset specific, and now there's a giant shift to say, how do we look at this from the customer's perspective, that when they're driving down the road, they don't just care about what the road condition is or how the traffic signals are working, they just care what is the quality and the reliability of this road. And as we start to look at that, it really takes a data culture to start to analyze and ask those questions and figure out how to do things better. And the nice thing is data and customer service go beyond the traditional silos. And that's really starting to challenge us to get out of the heavily driven paperwork that we deal with, and figure out what don't we know. I think citizens really expect us to know everything all the time. They drive by it, they see it, it's constantly pressing on them like, why isn't somebody dealing with this? And that's what we're trying to do, is enable those tools so that we have that information coming to us. And then we're sitting down with other areas in the city and saying, hey, look at these crazy tools that we have available. Like, this can improve people's lives, and we just want to share with you. So we're really trying to push that forward to take that perspective and change it.
Awesome. Now, Pablo, You showed us quite a bit of work that you have been doing with Waze, and I love the insights. And it seems like it's something, like you said, simple to deploy, right? So what's your recommendation looking at the future, looking at building more of that citizen engagement and citizen voice? How can we build that? How can we use Waze to really bring the citizens closer to their governments? What would be your recommendation?
Hard, very tough question. Waze is already helping a lot, especially being an example to other companies, because I believe that what you are doing is amazing, but we should have other companies doing the same. This kind of partnership, opening private data, anonymous, of course, private data for government, it's an amazing way to improve our democracy. But I think that in terms of ways, probably I'd like to see that information of how much the citizens were, how much the city are better because of the ways, and to receive, to send back information from the citizens to the city in terms of approval of the information shared on the tool. Do you know, I saw on the presentation about the broadcasting that the people can send a thumbs up for a news. That would be great for us in the public sector to see people thanking, saying thank you to us. Would be much easier to sell it to the mayor or to the executives of the public administration. Oh, look, the citizens are saying thank you because we are informing, we are using this data. That would be amazing.
I think Winnipeg did something like that, didn't you guys?
Exactly. So we really started off with no Wazers in our city. There was just a few. And so once we had all these tools to actually realize the benefit of this TMC, because it's not finishing the project really quick and doing the stuff, it's we need to realize the benefit. And the benefit comes by having users use Waze and give us that information, but then also then acting on it and then providing even better information right back. So one of the key things that we did to try and get that user is we created another user, and we said, this is Winnipeg TMC feedback. And when we got an alert and then we verified it and put even more information, we said, hey, thank you. Great information, keep it up. So they know that we're there, you know? So we're trying to do it with whatever tools we have because we really don't have much available to us. So let's maximize everything.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Thank you, guys. Do we have any audience questions? I'm gonna open it up now. Right here.
So, Jonathan, you said 650 signalized intersections. What kind of data are you having come into your system? Is it simply signal phase and timing, or are there other data sets as well coming out of the box?
Yeah, initially we're trying to figure out what exactly do we need right now. So we basically do polling from intersections, but not the detailed high accuracy traffic signal data, just to try and maximize our operational costs at the time. But we are looking at future opportunities, maybe partnerships, to enable, you know, a higher data plan to get that more detailed information. You know, I showed you video up there, and it's amazing how you can look, you know, 2 miles away with 720p at 15 frames per second at a megabit. But when we actually look at it in like motion JPEG, we're doing like 60 megabit on LTE, which is, it's amazing, right? So there is that data capability, and it's quick to move forward on it.
Any other questions? I'm a little tired. Right up here.
It's a question about this feedback with the citizens and what Winnipeg is doing. So it's thanking the citizens or letting them know something is fixed. And they mentioned several times during the day the case of São Paulo with 5,000 reports in 2 weeks for the broken traffic lights. But the question is, people submit that information and the capability of the city, so you need to be able to react to that, right? If there are 5,000 broken traffic lights, you need to be able to do something. Otherwise, you know, you have the initial impact, but then nothing else happens. So how do the cities prepare to that? Because you probably, if you open good ways of communication, you will receive a lot of reports, right?
No, the first step, you need to know the size of your problem. So the first step is to receive. Doesn't matter the size, the number of reports we're receiving, because at least you know the size of the challenge we're going to face. So you can resize your team. You can reallocate money to fix that problem. This is something that at least allows the mayor to take the better decision to create the most benefit as possible for the citizens. This is the first step. The second one is to make, and this is a city decision, but in my view, is to make these reports public. To show to the citizens, look, we have this number of reports, we are fixing these, and until the next month we are going to fix more of these. Would be much more transparent, much more public, that, okay, we cannot fix all in the same day. It's a lot. But this is a decision of the mayor.
I think you need that data and understandability, right? If it's just in paperwork somewhere, you don't really understand the scope of your issue. But once you understand the scope of the issue, you need those innovative tools. And we used to have, 7 years ago, a third of the city was dials and cogs. We had one person trying to time the lights. They couldn't make changes. And now we have the capability. Do you guys all remember when Street View came to the cities? Mm-hmm. And everybody was like, wow, I can go look at my street and know how to deal with things. And now what we're realizing with, say, traffic signal timing concerns, where we used to say, hey, thanks for the call. We'll get back to you in 1 to 2 years, whether we're actually going to look at it. It's like, are you going to continue to call the city and tell them? But now our traffic signal timing engineers are making changes right from their desk. They're looking at those cameras of different views. They're looking at all this other information, traffic flows with the context of those incidents and activities. And now they're saying, what do I do if I don't see my intersection? You know, like, it's a total different paradigm shift, whereas before it was hours to do that. So you need the data to know what do you need to focus on. You can work on automation and improving it even better in the future, but then you need to give tools and opportunities to your city workforce to actually enable those and influence.
And flipping it over to the private side, you know, we love to ask all of our customers for feedback. The problem is they're willing to give us feedback, and it's usually done via Twitter or Facebook or Yelp or other very public venues. So for us, whenever we ask that question, whether it's on our traffic or anything else, we know going in, we're prepared with what we believe the answer to be and how we're going to respond to what those happen to be. Most of the communication comes over Twitter instantly. If a person has a negative experience while they're waiting in traffic, it's always my fault, if you will. It doesn't matter if there's an accident. Ultimately, we are seen as the person that's responsible for the traffic during that particular period of time. And they'll let every single person that they know in their network precisely what they think of us at that moment. And so for us, that's where we rely heavily on Waze. We start the conversation with, sorry you had this experience. Did you use Waze to get to the event? Have you put in the correct address? Have you? And we start that dialogue. It does a couple things. One is it makes it be Waze's fault, which is always good. And then really the other thing, though, is it reinforces, at least for us, dialogue of, are you using the right method to come down to our venue for that? So same thing, being prepared to answer even if it's a private business.
Do we have any last questions? Oh, one more over there.
Pablo, actually. So one of the things, and I've heard this theme mentioned a couple of times about empowering citizens to give feedback, et cetera. But just like in the Atlanta situation where 2 or 3 people have a bad experience, and then no matter how well the plan was laid out or how good things were actually done and the good experience for everyone else, the 3 or 4 can sometimes have their voice amplified far larger than what it really should be. And so I was wondering what you think about this idea of just because voices are loud doesn't mean that they are as valuable as what their volume may seem, and how you modulate that in the course of these kinds of conversations, especially online where there seems to be a distortion where slivers are driving larger agendas.
A great question. Unfortunately, volume not always means quality, of course, especially when we are dealing with social data generated by the society. But our elections or model of choosing our leaders are based on numbers, are based on votes. So what we are seeing is sometimes people speaking and getting their voices louder than it should be. It's something not so important when we are talking about social network and the problem is only there. But as we are seeing on these elections all around the world, these effects are affecting who is going to be our next mayor or president or governor, etc. So I think we should change the way we consider voices in terms of volume, not on social network, not only as oh, is someone talking on a social network, forget about it. No, don't forget about it, because it's going to cause effects in a few years, and we are seeing. So we need to use this data to foresee what can happen, and to prepare our society for that, to answer faster, to be more effective in terms of creating public policies and goods, to not seize these voices, but to hear these voices and to respond to them.
And I would just add that doing the work is just as important as reporting on the work. I think as you see around here, we need to change that dialogue. There's a lot of cities doing really good work, a lot of people doing excellent things. But just like when you come up to somebody and you say, hey, what are you doing? And they say, man, I'm busy. And you say, like, what? And they say, man, I'm busy. What do you assume they're doing? Nothing. And that's really what we need to do, is enable that whole thing right from operations all the way up to flow and say, here's how well we're doing, and have that portrayed. And I thank you, Waze, for inviting us here to actually talk about this and to show those stories of the unique things that people are doing around the world, how the Rio Olympics were managed with excellent stuff, how Game Event Day is really being focused on, and that is changing the dialogue to get that message out as loudly.
Great. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, guys. Let's give everyone a quick round of applause.
I was just going to say, right before we have a coffee break coming up, but I wanted to ask you guys, few words, what is the city of tomorrow? Oh, who's going to bite?
The city integrated with their society.
Yeah. Yes.
And I would say if everyone does a little bit, we all do a lot.
Jason?
And for me, the city of tomorrow is all about mobility, and that's it. It's how we get around each other and interact with each other that way. So.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And
Thank you all. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Waze
Guys.
team.